All right. So today I have a very special guest that I'm very excited for, and I hope you are too. She's amazing. She was on my podcast already, Stories with Sapphire. You've heard her spooky stories and creepy creature facts, and she's amazing. And she is like just a chill animal expert. She knows a lot about animals and insects and bugs and things, organisms, and you've probably seen her, you know her, you love her. Without further ado, let me bring on Emzotic.
How you all doing? How you doing, Sapphire?
I'm very sweaty.
Sweaty.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Cool. So before we begin, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself and then what we're going to talk about today?
Sure thing. Well, hi everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in, whether you're in the live show or you're catching up with us on YouTube or another platform afterwards. Appreciate you having us here and you being here. I am Em, also known as Emzotic. I'm an animal educator, a former zookeeper, and just nuts about all animals. I am obsessed with organisms. So that's me in a nutshell. I just like to talk about animals. They are my obsession, everything to do with them. And I tend to share my life as a pet parent and an animal enthusiast online on my YouTube, Emzotic, as well. So shameless promoting myself there.
Yeah. What types of animals do you take care of right now?
So right now in this room in particular, like there's a lot of animals in the house, but right now we have 2 ferrets in the closet because they make a lot of noise. So they've been banished to the closet, which is a really big room, by the way, not just like a little closet. Like, get in there, ferrets. Then there are 2 snakes off to my left, which is your right. And then there is 2 tokay geckos behind me in this enclosure, which is kind of cool. And then I have my beautiful dog on the floor. Kiba, you want to come up and say hi?
Kiba!
Do you want a treat? Come here.
I want to see Kiba.
Up. Good boy.
Oh,
He's a bear.
My goodness. What is that?
That's the ferret substrate. I guess he was playing with them. You are so heavy. Do you want a treat? Here, get the treat. Do you want the yummy camel jerky? Good. You can go away now.
What so a gentle giant.
He is.
I love him sweet. So much.
He's the best. He's really the best. He's going to enjoy his camel jerky now.
Awesome. So that's a lot of different animals. Would you say what is your favorite animal to take care of? What would you say your favorite animal in your place right now?
Like the favorite animal that I have right now?
Yeah. Favorite.
So my favorite animal that I take care of right now, I suppose would have to be my dog, because we get to go out and go on adventures together. But the ferrets are a close second because they're a handful, which I like when it comes to animals. I like when animals give you a bit of pushback and are really mischievous. So it's impossible to get anything done when you have ferrets. If you guys have ferrets or have ever interacted with them, don't drink my Red Bull, Keeper. You'll know that they can be a handful. So yes, ferrets are really mischievous. They're a lot of fun, so I really enjoy looking after them.
Awesome. Yeah, I love the videos that you post of yours. They're just because I've never owned a ferret. I've never really interacted with ferrets, but they're so funny looking. Just they're so long. So they run, their just body kind of like a slinky.
That's a great analogy for them. They really are just a fur slinky. It's almost like they have a head and a tail, and in between it's just goo. Yeah. That just moves around.
It's kind of cool though. I don't know. Yeah. I think the first time I saw a ferret in person was when I was at my friend's place, and she had this little white one. And then, she took it out and was showing all of us because it was like a party. And then when she put him back, she like folded him and then put it in the cage. I remember going, "You can fold them?" She was like, "Yeah, it's fine." It's just like, it felt weird to me, like just folding this animal. I was like, is its spine okay? But I'm sure it is.
Yeah, they're super slinky. It's like folding fleshy origami. They're just gross.
Speaking of gross, we are going to talk about a lot of really gross creatures today. So you brought up a couple that you want to discuss, and I pulled up the photos. Let me prep them right now. But one of them, let's get the grossest one out of the way just so I can forget about it.
All right. I think you and I both know which one that happens to be. And by the way, anyone who is watching, when I say like an animal is gross, I genuinely don't mean that like I dislike the animal, but this just gives me the heebie-jeebies. And we're gonna just chat really quickly about the pipa toad. If anybody is in the comment section and knows what the pipa toad is, oh my goodness. Discuss, are they gross or what?
They kind of, I don't know if this makes it grosser or less gross, but they kind of look like little bobas on top of its back.
It's so gross. So anyone who happens not to be looking at this wonderfully graphic picture right now, the pipa toad is a toad from South America, and they live naturally in the water, and they're perfectly camouflaged for being on the riverbeds. They just look like a glob of mud, really. But what makes them, in my opinion, just so gross is the way that they look after their young, their offspring. Now, with a lot of animals, many young don't actually get to adulthood, because when it comes to toads and frogs, they happen to be laid normally as eggs, like frogs spawn, toads spawn. But the pipa toad is completely unique in the sense that when it's time to mate, the females, they release their eggs, and while the male is mating with them, he kind of smushes them onto the back of the female, and then they absorb into her skin, and it becomes like this fleshy honeycomb of just babies living in the mother's back until they eventually form into little functional toads, and then eventually they leave. But they live there. There's hundreds of babies hidden in her back, and I don't know about you guys, but I have like mild trypophobia, which is a phobia of clusters of holes. And this is just, it's like the lotus seed. It's so gross.
Oh God. Yeah, I saw a lotus flower like this weekend, and I almost barfed because I forgot how gross they could be. Okay,
no,
do you know anything about the biology of why trypophobia happens? Because I super have it.
I don't know the exact science. I just think that it might be the way that certain animals, this is just my theory, you guys can all feel free to chime in with what your theories are, but my two theories are, number one, just as some animals are afraid of seeing like eyes, so that's why you see like butterflies that have an eye print on them, that they look like eyes, it kind of freaks out predators. I feel like in the one sense, it's supposed to be so off-putting that predators don't want anything to do with the animal. But secondly, from a human perspective, I feel like clusters of holes, especially when it comes to our bodies or anywhere in nature, is never a good thing in a society where animals like humans like ourselves used to have to fend for survival. So you'd naturally want to stay away from clusters of holes. You don't know what's inside them, and when it comes to your body, it means parasites. So I think that's why perhaps we have an aversion to clusters of holes when it comes to trypophobia. But I'm not an expert in phobias. Feel free to chime in with your thoughts. Do you have any thoughts on that, Sapphire?
I think you nailed it. I think that's what I've heard too, where because like oh God, like photos of people with like their skin is inflamed and you see all the pores are like huge, like, or like there's little like magnets coming out. I have major chills right now, dude. Like I have goosebumps all over my body. Like it just like the thought of it just like grosses me out so much, and I hate it. It just like, it's very specific though too, because there's certain things that trigger some people, but I'm fine with. Like honeycombs, I'm fine with. I think because they're so uniform. Like when it's uniform, I think I'm okay. I don't know, they don't bother me as much, but like this, like stuff that's like organic holes that are like kind of different sizes, and like, oh, I can't.
So definitely no videos of mango worm extractions for you.
What is the mango worm?
Oh my God, you'll never forgive me if you ever Google them. So there are these just maggots that tend to. I'm so sorry, none of your business. I just saw your comment flash up. Mango worms, if you do look them up, they literally are like little maggots that live, well, they're big. They're like Sour Patch Doll sized, and they tend to infest like different animals, like different mammals, like dogs, for example. And you can literally just grab the skin of a dog that's infested and push slightly, and literally hundreds of them come out. And it's so gross.
I've seen that. I have seen that.
It's
and
not very nice. But you know what? You know what's weird is I'm really obsessed with videos of whitehead and blackhead extractions. That's fine. That's fine for me. I don't know why.
I think it's a little different. It's a different vibe.
Because it's not alive.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what it is. It's not alive.
Someone said, I searched him up and now I regret that choice.
I'm very sorry that you made that decision to look them up. And I sincerely hope you were not eating. 15 out of 10 would not recommend you ever Google mango worms.
Well, okay, gross. So enough about these boba toads.
That's as gross as it's gonna get.
Yeah. Well, what phase of the birthing? What phase of the cycle was that photo? Is that when they were just impregnate? Like,
no. So, when the eggs are sort of fused into the mother's back, they literally look like little pearls on her back, and they eventually, over a couple of days, kind of absorb into the skin, and they just sort of embed and sort of spread out and just nestle down into her back, as it were. And what we just saw, it was kind of small because I'm on my phone, so like kind of on a small screen, but it's towards the end when they're getting ready to go off and enjoy their lives.
Okay, because there's photos where they have just left the body, and then you see all the holes, and that one, like, I was like, no,
not cool. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, I went to a local reptile store, and they actually had some of these toads in stock. And I was like, hey, you there, who happens to work here? Is your boss here? And he was like, no. And I was like, can I touch your pipa? He was like, why would you want to? And I was like, I just don't like them, but I want to see how they feel for myself because I need to touch it. So I did. Again, 15, like? Exactly as you would imagine. Just like, okay, you know, like when you eat like a Chinese dumpling, like that, but wet on your hand.
What?
Dim sum will never be the same.
No, don't ruin dim sum for me. Boba's ruined. Dim sum's ruined. God damn it.
All the good things.
Okay, so let's the next animal that we're gonna talk about. Actually, I pulled up a really cute photo on a.
Yeah, you want to show me?
It's so cute. It's just like a tiny baby little horned lizard.
Yes, horned lizards are just fantastic. And for anyone who's just joining in, what Sapphire and I were talking about before the show is just how certain animals can be a little bit freaky. And it's difficult to imagine this gorgeous lizard having anything about it that is particularly freaky. But they do. This lizard, the horned lizard, is actually really prevalent in Texas. So shout out to anybody who's watching from Texas. You should keep an eye out. An eye out. We'll come on to that later. For these lizards. Texas, incidentally, is one of my favorite states. Highly recommend. I love Texas. But yes, they have these incredible jagged bodies. And naturally, being such a small lizard in the middle of a sort of desert kind of area like Texas, where it's really hot, there are a ton of aerial predators. So these horned lizards have to be able to, I was going to say assert themselves. No, that's what I'm supposed to be working on, is being more assertive. but what these guys have to do is they have to be able to protect themselves. And they have a ton of different ways that they can do that. So like, let's say an aerial predator is coming in to hurt this gorgeous horned lizard. It's going to come in and attack from the sky. Let's say like a Harris hawk or something. It's going to come in and try and attack it. The first thing that these lizards can do is they've got really spiny bodies. So the first thing they can do is they puff up their jagged bodies like a puffer fish, if you will. So when a predator tries to eat them, they're just going to get a mouth or a beak full of spines, which are very, very, very painful. The next thing that they do, which is actually kind of cute, is if they don't manage to like stab their predator the first time, they flail around like they're kind of break dancing, and they're like, oh, let me see if I can get you with my shoulder or with my hip. So it's kind of interesting to watch. And then while they're doing this is where it gets really kind of cool or gross, depending on where you are with this. But they actually build up blood pressure in their faces. So they are building it up. And then if the animal persists in bothering them, they literally shoot blood from their eyes. And it's the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. And it is like bright red blood that they shoot out from their eyes. It's mind-blowing. It's something out of a horror movie. And the way that they do it is they can actually project the blood like 5 feet into the air. Yeah, like 5 feet in any direction. And it's like a proper jet stream. It's not just like a little spritz. It's a jet stream of it from both of their eyes, and they can move their eyeballs around while they're doing this to like shoot it wherever they want. It's like they have aim, and the thing is, they're actually it smells worse than regular blood. So it's actually like it's got a special chemical reaction which is repulsive to any animal with a sensitive nose. So while these animals are like, why is this thing bleeding on me? They're just like, sucker. They just like scurry away, like while the blood pressure in their head just sort of chills. But what in the evolution is that? What was Mother Nature thinking? When she's like, you know what? The armadillo has like a nice kind of like shelled back, and nothing's gonna really mess with a shark. They've got these great teeth, and you know what? Certain animals are just really fast, like the roadrunner. But we're gonna give this cute little lizard blood-shooting eyes.
I mean, it's pretty badass, but I'm wondering how does that work? Like, because I'm thinking about eyes is how they work on a human's head, like, but how does an eye work on a horny? Is that it? Yeah, horned lizard.
Horned lizard. That's something
horny horned lizard. Because is it like through the actual eye, or is it like behind the eye, or like where does the blood actually go through, and like
I think it's a special tear duct potentially.
Oh, so it's like a separate thing.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't think it's actually through the actual eye. I'm not 100% on it. Whenever I've looked it up, I've been a little bit sort of like grossed out by it. So I'm like, cool, it shoots blood from its eyes. Nice, peace out. But I would imagine that it is a kind of a tear duct sort of setup where blood it comes out from a certain area, and then they can just, by contracting their muscles potentially and moving their eyes, decide on the aim. But that's a really good question, so I'm gonna have to look that one up properly afterwards. But yes, I think it's probably a tear duct kind of setup.
That's so cool. It's like so metal. Ooh, 34 I Like Pie says thorny devils in Australia are fun too. What are thorny devils?
They're very, very similar looking lizards. It's a really good example of convergent evolution, where two animals in completely different places have very, very similar characteristics. I believe the thorny devils also have the ability to shoot blood from their eyes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, okay. So really interesting convergent evolution there.
Nice. Ooh, I do want to shout out my friend really quick. Hi, Jay. Thanks, Ab. Is this going to be another scary stream? Because I am here for it. Well, this is a different type of scary. We're talking about really weird and creepy creatures. So strap in. Oops. Oh, hello. Sorry, I'm now clicking all these random comments.
Nice.
Anything else about the? I almost called it the horny toad again. The horned lizard.
15 out of 10 would not recommend you try and tango with them in the wild. If you do happen to see them, it's always better just to give them a little bit of respectful distance. That's something I like to instill in a lot of my personal viewers, is if they find an animal outside in the wild, it's best to remain hands off, just because you never know. And I can't imagine trying to pick one up is going to be particularly pleasant. But aside from that, no, they're just awesome little critters, and I have massive respect for them. I just don't want to get shot with bloody eyes.
Matt says, beware if you're eating food.
I think anyone who's just joining us now is mostly safe if they're eating food. Anyone who's here before, boy, you came early and you chose the wrong decision.
All right, so let me pull up. What's the other one that we wanted to? Stiletto snake. So you said you had a cool story about this.
I do, and it's not a story that happened personally to me, but it did happen to a good friend of mine. So let me track it back a little bit. This is an incredible snake from South Africa, and it doesn't look like much, but it is one of the most venomous snakes in the world, and it's actually responsible for a ton of fatal snake bites in South Africa. And the reason why they are so fatal is, a lot of people, when they're trying to handle a snake, which I don't recommend unless you really know what you're doing, they go in and try and either tail the snake, or they go in just behind the head, thinking that if they grab it behind the head, like you can with a lot of venomous snakes, again, please don't do it if you're not professional, you can avoid getting bitten or stabbed by those venomous fangs. And when you think of a snake's fangs, typically, this is a really crude example, but they're like this at the front. But with the stiletto snake, they're out the sides like this, and they're really, really small. So kind of like when you go to pick them up, or if you're accidentally stepping on them, most snakes, they can like strike and let go. With these, even just as they're thrashing, they don't necessarily have to bite. Even just a scratch from one of those protruding fangs from a stiletto snake's mouth while they're thrashing can cause severe damage. Now, I said I had a little story about the stiletto snake. One of my good friends, I'll just call him Mike. That is his real name, but I'm not going to mention his full name. Just, I haven't asked his permission, but he won't mind. He was working in a controlled setup with these. Yes, their fangs do kind of poke out sideways. They do. That was in response to a comment that we just had. What he was doing is he was working with stiletto snakes in a controlled setup, and he was working, I believe, doing some research with Venoms. And this is a really seasoned professional. He's probably one of the best in the world at what he does, and he also incidentally makes a lot of documentaries about animals. So really, really knowledgeable. Like his whole life has been snakes. He knows what he's doing. But he had like a little lapse in concentration, and he just got nicked on the thumb with the fang of a stiletto snake. Now, by his account, it was the most painful experience of his life, where he truly almost died. And it was just a little graze. Like, this snake didn't necessarily even have to wrap around him and pump in a ton of venom. They are so very, very venomous. Now, aside from actually getting bitten by a venomous snake, which is, terrifying enough, what's actually more terrifying is what happened afterwards. So naturally what happened is his thumb, due to the nature of the venoms, kind of started to corrode away, and he did manage to get anti-venom. He managed to save his life and his arm and his hand, but his finger literally rotted away, and like the little bit of bone at the very end ended up just like popping off, because it died. And the doctors and the surgeons were like, hey Mike, we're gonna try and save what's left of your thumb, but we're gonna do it in an experimental fashion, okay? He was like, yeah, sure, go for it. I mean, he's just a super chill dude. And it gets better, because what they did is they had to preserve the living tissue on his finger before they could actually do surgery to save the rest of the finger. So how do you keep the flesh on a finger alive when it's all like corroding away and rotting away? What they did, and this is the truth, like it's very well documented, they sewed his thumb onto his belly button.
What?
They sewed his thumb onto his belly button because then they could keep the tissue alive while he had to wait a couple of weeks or maybe even months to wait for the right surgeon to correct what happened to his thumb. And he said it was the weirdest thing. People kept on looking at him like he was some kind of pervert because he's walking around
right here.
like with his hand in his, like, it looks like it's down his pants for what most people, it's like inside his t-shirt. And then most people looked at him like some kind of weirdo, but if they'd really known that his thumb was stitched onto his belly button, they probably would have been even more horrified. But long story short, he survived. His thumb will never look the same, but now he does give what we call affectionately within like the reptile community, the Mike thumbs up, which is like this. Thanks to a stiletto snake just nicking him on the thumb like a papercut amount. And he ended up having to live with his thumb on his belly button for the longest time. And I just, hats off to him. I don't know if I would have been able to stomach it, but he did it. And what a great story that is. That is just the stuff of nightmares, truly.
Wow, that is horrifying and incredible because it's just like this snake is so unbelievably powerful that, oh wow. So you know that imagery kind of reminded me of you know how like back in the day when people had syphilis and their noses would fall off, and the way that they would like graft it was like by using the arm tissue. Did you ever see? Yeah, that's kind of what it reminded me of.
Except instead of grafting his thumb to his nose, they were like, hey, we'll just do it to your belly button. It doesn't matter if we mess up your belly button. It's fine.
That's true. How long ago did this happen?
Oh gosh, this was like maybe 10 years ago now, I guess.
So a while ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago. And he actually had like TV shows come and follow what happened to his finger because it's just so funny. He did a couple of those like I Shouldn't Be Alive shows. I don't know if it was I Shouldn't Be Alive or I Survived, those kind of shows. And they followed and they showed the pictures, man, the pictures are so bad. There's like documented pictures of his thumb like rotting away and then being stitched onto his stomach and what it looks like now. And now it literally just looks like a stump, like, oh. But yeah, it's funny.
How long did it take from the little nick and then to it like starting to rot? Did it happen like
days,
away?
Hours and days. Yeah. Hours and days.
So where do these snakes reside?
South Africa.
Cool. So don't go to South Africa.
Right? Just don't mess with any snake, period. But if it happens to look like a stiletto snake in South Africa, mind your thumbs.
My friend's asking, I mean, if I know that you said you didn't want to like say, but
it's fine. Yeah, you can look him up. His name's Mike Clarkson, but the way you spell Mike is Myke. So yeah, Mike Clarkson. Yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna look this up.
You should, like Mike Clarkson stiletto snake. Awesome. The pics are fantastic.
That's wild. Wow. Why is it called a stiletto snake? Is it because of the fangs look like stilettos?
Kind of. I mean, stiletto, I think it comes from an Italian word. Someone might be able to correct me here, but there is also a knife type called a stiletto knife, and it's a very long, thin, pointy blade. So I have a feeling that stiletto, also with a stiletto heel, is something like this, like long and dainty and pointy, and the fangs on a stiletto snake, which do jut out to the side like this, they are very thin and you can almost not see them. Like you can get stabbed by them and not realize that you've even been grazed until it's too late because they're so fine. So I think it's something to do with the daintiness perhaps and the length of their teeth.
Wow. Cool. So stay away from those.
Yes, like I'm a stiletto snake.
Oh my God.
Too
So
much
we're
Red Bull for Emma. Seriously, it's 8:30 where I am, and I'm like on my third Red Bull of the day. Not sponsored, but
doing? Well, you stay up late, huh?
I just don't sleep. I'm supposed to be working on having an actual sleeping schedule, but it gets like 3, 4 in the morning, and I'm like, I'm still not sleepy. But then I'll be up at 6 or 7 again. I slept 2 hours, but I'm not sleepy, so I'm just gonna caffeine my way through the day, and then by the end of the day, I'm totally nuts as usual. So yes, I just don't tend to sleep. I spend my days looking up stiletto snakes and pipa toads.
I love it though. All right. So you said that there's only one creature that actually does creep you out.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious to know why. It is the moth.
All right.
Does this scare you right now?
Oh, like we're just not vibing. We're just not vibing. So some moths are kind of cute. Like they're fuzzy. They serve a purpose. That's fine. That's totally fine. I'll come on to why I don't like them in a moment, because it's another pretty interesting story, and one that people might not want to be eating while I tell it. Yeah, I'll give you fair warning when we come on to it. But yes, I do have not a fear. It did used to be a fear. Now it's just like a dislike. So I'm not going to hurt a moth if it's in my presence. I'm just going to be like, you can stay over there and not come near my face, and then we'll be cool. Or I will just, capture them and put them outside. I won't hurt them, but certainly not fans of them, which is funny because when I worked as a zookeeper, I had to get over my fear of butterflies and moths because they had a butterfly house that they wanted me to work in with Atlas moths, which are just the biggest moth. Yes. So they wanted me to work in there, and I was like, great, first day on my job, and you're just gonna throw me in with the one animal I didn't want to work with? Fine, this is fine. So I did have to get over my fear. But moths in general are just, I guess it's because they're creatures of the night, and whenever we're out at nighttime, we have flashlights to help us to see, and naturally moths are drawn to light. And whenever I've been out in the field at nighttime, I've always had a headlamp, which means they're coming at my face, and I don't appreciate that. And I'll come on to the actual story why I don't appreciate moths in my face. But there is a really interesting thing that moths and some butterflies do, which some of you viewers might not be familiar with yet. But moths actually have been pretty well documented kind of stealing the tears of animals in order to gain moisture. So especially when it comes to larger animals like cattle or even crocodilians and some turtles, they will secrete from their eyes, and butterflies and moths will actually drink from the eyes of animals. So that's, fine, no problem. It doesn't seem to bother a lot of these animals, and they're going to share their H2O. That's fine. But in Madagascar, there is a moth. I can't remember the actual species. I think it's a whole variety of them, which forcefully drink from animals at nighttime. And the reason why is because in Madagascar, there aren't a lot of larger animals. There aren't, say, lots of cattle. There's not, say, bigger species of animals like lions, for example. One of their larger species of mammal is just lemurs. And lemurs have opposable thumbs and fingers that they can use to swat away. So a moth is not going to get too much of a tasty drink from their eyes. So instead, what these moths will do is they wait until nighttime and they go and find birds which are sleeping. And I don't know if you know this or not, but birds will not fly at night unless they're a couple of very specific species. But birds will generally not fly at nighttime. It's not their thing. Like, they can't see and they don't tend to move. They're just sort of like frozen the whole night. So these moths will find these birds that can't move away, and they'll land on these birds' heads. And the moths will have this long thing called a proboscis, which is a lot like, it's got a barb on the end, but it's like a curly tongue that they usually use to drink up like nectar and moisture. And it literally worms its way under the eyelid of the bird. And the moth's just like, yep, I'm just going to steal your juices right now. And the birds, even if they wanted to move, they won't do it because it's nighttime. So they're just stuck there while this moth or whatever it is, the bird doesn't know what it is just drinking from its eyeballs. That's one reason I do not particularly appreciate moths. But the real reason, here we go, is that I grew up in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is a tropical island, and as such we have some really fascinating wildlife there, some of which are very large insects, and the moths that we get are literally like the size of my face even now as an adult. They're huge. And the place that I grew up, it had like a garage area which was communal for a big block of apartments, and the walls were painted white, so naturally at nighttime all of the moths would gravitate to this wall. And initially I didn't like them because whenever I had to go out and see my friends at nighttime, or if I wanted to, I had to walk past these moths that were just like flying everywhere. And if you walk past them on the walls, they were just like vibrating all over the walls, just like moving like this all over the place. Did not like it. But what I did like was I had this really cute neighbor friend of mine, and I was like 10 at the time, or younger, maybe like 9. And I really liked this boy. It was the first boy I ever liked. And we had this game in our group of friends where we would see who could go up to the moths and touch their nose onto a moth and like touch it and then run away.
Oh, I see where this is going. Okay, go on.
So at the time, I was like, you know what? None of the other girls are doing it. And this boy who I really like is doing this. So I'm gonna impress him, right? Because that's what we women have to do. We have to impress men. We don't. We really don't. Especially not boys like this. And I was like, I'll do it. So all the girls are standing back, all my girlfriends. They're like, oh my gosh, Em, you're so brave. And this boy comes up with me. He's like, okay, I'm going to be like right there with you. Let's both see if we can do this. And I'm like, oh, my nose is going to be near to another boy's nose for the first time ever. This is so exciting. So I'm like going in there and he's right next to me, and I'm going to go in and touch the moth first. And before I even get to the moth, I can just feel the fur of the moth's back on my nose, like the peach fuzz on my nose. And the boy grabs my head and smushes my face onto the biggest moth I've ever seen in my life. And this moth is like, it's vibrating like this all over my face. And I'm screaming. My mouth is open. It's going everywhere. The moth bursts on my face. On my face. It was so disgusting. And like it like popped in my mouth pretty much. And the dust went all over me.
No!
And like one of the parts of the wings was like stuck to my sweaty, crying face. And the boy's like, ha ha, and runs away. And I was like, I don't like you anymore. I have to drink some Red Bull.
What? Wait,
so
how
gross.
old were you? How old was that?
9, 10. Which is why
that is traumatizing.
It's why I don't vibe with moths, you see, because every time a moth comes near my face, I just have the memory of how it tasted and felt as the moth like died on my face, and my face became a moth graveyard. It was so gross. So needless to say, I never spoke to that boy ever again.
Who would?
Ever. No, like absolutely not. If you're going to smush my face on a living organism, you're only going to do it once.
That's so unbelievably rude. But I guess he's a kid, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know. That's a psychopath. I don't like him.
I don't know. I think he needs to be retrospectively punished because he damaged me for the rest of my life.
No.
I'm kind of over it now at this point. Kind of not, just like, it is what it is. I just don't vibe with moths for that reason. And they steal your tears.
You know what's so funny? When you were telling that story, I thought what was going to happen was that you were going to put your face near it, and then the moth like attached to your eyeball and then started drinking your tears. That's what I thought was going to go. But I think your actual story is way worse. It exploded on your face.
I don't know what would be worse, to be completely honest with you. I lived through one thing. I don't know if I could live through waking up and finding moths drinking from my eyeballs.
Yeah, that's pretty gross too.
Yeah, I do not recommend. But hey, they are beautiful.
Do they drink human tears or just
No,
animal?
Just
so
animal.
They would leave us alone.
Yes, they would leave us alone. Thank goodness.
I'll test that.
so gross.
Oh God. Wait, but you said that you don't like butterflies either? Is it because they're sort of like similar to moths, so they remind you of?
Yeah, they're similar. It was never quite as bad with butterflies. Like no butterfly has ever died on my face, to my knowledge. It's just, I guess also because there is the thought that animals that come out in the day are maybe not as scary as the ones that come out at night. So with butterflies, I associate them with the daytime and beautiful flowers, and moths, I'm just like, it's death and destruction on my face.
I get that. No, I feel that.
But like essentially they're pretty much the same animal. So go figure.
Is it the only difference that butterflies are daytime creatures and then moths are nocturnal?
Not specifically. There are some moths that do come out in the daytime, which is kind of cool. But they're similar. Not quite the same. I don't know the exact differences. I would just say the main difference is that moths tend to be nocturnal creatures. Tend to be. There are exceptions. Yes.
Are you familiar with the spiritual meaning of moths?
No, but I do see them everywhere. Like there's this girl.
They're taunting you.
No, it's all good. I do see them in a lot of like paranormal paraphernalia. Like what do you call those things that you use on Ouija boards? Planchettes, yes. There is a girl on Instagram I follow who creates resin planchettes, and she always has really interesting ones with moth designs. And I also guess I saw them on the poster of like the Silence of the Lambs. So again, that's kind of horror. But no, what is their significance? Do you know what it is?
I looked it up and I immediately forgot. I looked it up because like maybe a couple weeks ago, I was sitting in my living room and I saw a moth sort of just like floating around. And it caught my eye. Like usually I don't really pay attention to the insects in my house, but I'm sitting there and watching it. And then I look away and then all of a sudden it comes like right in front of me and it lands on my arm and it like stayed there. And I just like stared at it and I was just like, what do I do? And I remember like, I think I like got up and just sort of like went outside and waited for it to like leave my arm. But yeah. And that happened around the same time that I started noticing a lot of spiders being drawn to me too. And I'm terrified of spiders, but I just kept noticing, like, I'll be sitting on the living room couch and then I noticed this giant spider on the ground just like moving towards me. And I'm like, so I like grabbed a dustpan and like brought it outside. And usually like I would have just killed them, but I'm starting to be like, okay, I'm just gonna like relocate things instead of killing them because they're just going about their day. They're just going about their business. Like I don't need to kill them. That happened, and then another time I think I woke up with like a spider on my arm. Like I just noticed like insects were being drawn to me. So I was like, does this mean something?
Yeah.
And I forget. Maybe I'll Google it really quick.
Yeah, Google it when you do that.
Spiritual meaning of moths. Oh, I found it. Okay, so moths tend to represent wisdom, truth, concealment, secrets, subtlety, faith, determination, vulnerability, and weakness. That's a lot of things. The moth wants you to open up and show the world who you truly are so that you can make improvements down the road.
Okay. That sounds kind of judgmental. The judgmental moth is visiting you like, you can do better, Sapphire.
I know.
You can do better.
Like, relax, moth. I figuring it out.
Right. Like, go visit M and go and sit on her face.
Yeah. Go explode on someone's face, please.
Right. Just yeah, moths are one of those creatures that I do think get kind of unfairly stigmatized, because you do see them in a lot of paranormal paraphernalia, and people probably associate them with death or hauntings, like negative hauntings. But I personally think that they do play a really important role. They feed plenty of different animals. Everyone has that. Moths are like backhanded compliments. Oh, I love that. I I just personally have like that little bit of personal trauma that I did not appreciate in my early life, and I'm working on it, though. I don't like to have a fear of any animals, and really, there's nothing a moth can do to hurt you.
Right.
Yeah,
It's just
they can't.
You just have that connection with the
A very negative association with a moth. Yes. But I don't kill them. I just let them go about their day.
shoot
I'm just
them
like,
away.
you can stay there. Yes.
Are there any other creatures that you feel a certain way about, or do you truly love everything?
I truly love and appreciate every single animal, and especially if I have been afraid of that animal in my past, I try and spend extra time understanding what it is about the animal that scares me and learning to kind of reprogram my brain away from it. Now, I get why we do have fears of animals. You know, we are a human, and there are certain animals that can hurt us, which is why a lot of people don't like swimming in the sea. They don't like not knowing what's beneath them, like sharks, for example. I get it, but I want to try and challenge myself to get over anything that does make me fear. Actually, speaking of the sea, I think a lot of people do fear sharks, and I think one of the things, especially when it comes to sharks, that I like is kind of that fear factor, because they are such an incredible predator. And I don't want to scare anyone when it comes to sharks, because sharks have enough to contend with and they really don't want to hurt us. But they're such a perfect predator. I mean, let's take the great white shark, for example. Everyone knows kind of what a great white shark looks like. You know, on the top, they're kind of gray. And when you look at them from the side, underneath, they've got this white belly, which is why they're called the like great white shark. But when you think about it, it's like evolutionary genius, because think about it. If you're a fish or even a human and you're diving and you look down and everything is gray around you, you don't see the shark. If you are diving and you're pretty far down and you look up and there's a white belly above you, you don't see the shark. It's only when it's right there and they're like, hello.
That is true. Holy crap.
So it's very difficult in a lot of water to see a great white shark, but you know, that's why people fear them. They come out of nowhere. If you've ever been in the water with a shark and you've seen them accelerate, boy, does that come at you fast. Like, I'm not afraid of sharks, and I've been in the water with sharks before without shark nets or anything. They really they're not interested in us for the most part. But when you see them accelerate, like, it does something. The adrenaline rush is incredible. It does something to your body where you just realize, I am not supposed to be in the water with these creatures, because they are so well adapted to being in the water and predating on creatures in the water, much like us. But I don't want to turn anyone off of sharks. They are incredible creatures. I have a huge respect for them.
They're super smart.
Yes, and they do a really important job. They are nature's cleanup crew. They go after the dying, the sick, and the decaying. And it's very important, because otherwise it's a pollutant. And they pick off the sick, which do not get a chance to reproduce and pass on, like, kind of lesser genes, if you will, for the animal kingdom. They have to be able to survive. And typically with sharks, if they're trying to investigate you, they bump you with their nose a couple of times. You know, a lot of people get bumped by sharks but don't actually get bitten, because the sharks want to know what you are. And we're not really a natural prey for them. They're not interested in us.
Right.
You do get the occasional rogue shark, but in general, there are so many of them, you just don't see them because they want to keep to themselves.
Right. And is it true that when Jaws came out, that was the major turning point for why everyone was afraid of sharks, or were people afraid of them before that movie came out?
Yeah, people I think have always been afraid of what they don't understand, and naturally the sea is full of mystery. Especially when it comes to the creatures that lurk within. You've got mythical creatures like the kraken, kelpies, everything that's sort of
Hmm.
like creepy that lives in the water. It's always bad news, like sea sirens that lure sailors to their deaths and things. So naturally, there is intrigue around the sea, and it's also a force that we can't control it. We can't control the sea. So I do think that sharks have always been feared. Naturally, they're such elusive predators, and we've always understood as humans what they can do to us. But certainly, when it came to Jaws, yes, it did prey on people. And Jaws was a very interesting phenomenon because it's based on a real story. It's based on one of the very few real stories about a rogue shark, which was at Point Pleasant, I think, in New Jersey.
Hmm.
And it's based on true story. So not only is this a very isolated incident, which was horrific, it was based on a true story and then dramatized in Hollywood. So people were like, sharks are demons. We should
Right.
not go in the water. But really, it's fascinating how few sharks really hurt people in a year.
Yeah.
Especially when you think about if you go in a car at any point, you're so much more likely to get in an accident than you are swimming in the sea at any point anywhere in the world encountering a shark. So really, there's nothing really to be afraid of.
Oh, somebody says add 1,000% more poisonous, venomous stuff in Australia. Is
Oh
Australia
yeah,
filled with like really poisonous
yeah.
entities?
Australia is a really fascinating place because it's kind of broken off from so much of the world. It's its own little entity, and the creatures there have been so isolated for years that they've developed some really interesting characteristics, really
Hmm.
interesting physiologies as well. I mean, you've got the kangaroo and the Tasmanian devil and like wallabies. They're just really peculiar looking creatures. The platypus and koalas, which aren't bears, by the way, but just really interesting creatures. And because of that, they hunt very specific ways, and a lot of the creatures there are very venomous because they're small and they have to bring down large prey. They don't know when they're going to encounter another meal. So yes, a lot of the animals in Australia are some of the most venomous in the world, which is, in my opinion, fascinating. I love it. But certainly, every time I have visited Australia, it's one of my favorite places. I'm very careful to shake out my boots every single morning.
Mm. What is one of the most poisonous or venomous animals in Australia?
Oh, and probably one that I've kept myself, and it's probably the cane toad.
What is
Yeah,
that?
it's a beautiful big toad, which is invasive in Australia. In Australia, people are not fans of the cane toad, but they're kind of an interesting animal. So these toads are originally from South America, and they were imported into Australia to take care of the cane beetle, which was eating up all of the crops. And the Australian government actually thought, you know what, let's not use pesticides, let's not burn the crops. We'll take care of it in a natural way. I respect that. You know, they wanted to bring in a natural predator for the the cane beetle, so they imported, I think it was like 97 cane toads from South America into Australia, and they released them into the wild. Problem is, cane toads are like this big, and they're fat and they're heavy and they don't climb. And the cane beetles don't just chill on the floor, they're like hanging out at the very top of the crops. So the cane beetles continued to thrive, and the cane toads, even when they did manage to eat the cane beetles, they were like, nah, dislike, not my flavor. So they started eating everything else. And unfortunately, they have decimated a lot of wildlife in Australia, and they reproduce at a prolific rate. Now, these cane toads, they actually secrete a poison. It looks like a white mucus or a white pus from these big secretion sacs that they have on the side of their heads. Um, and they are so poisonous that even if they just like crawl over a dog's water bowl, if the dog then drinks from the water bowl after that, the dog will die. They are
Whoa.
really, really poisonous. And you might actually have just heard me talk about poisons and venoms. There is a difference. So, venom is something that's injected into you, poison is something that you ingest. So a
Mm.
mushroom, it can be poisonous, but a snake, if it injects you with its venom, is venomous. So that's why I'm sort of flitting between the two there.
I didn't
Yeah.
know what the difference was. Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Poison and venom.
Oh man, animals are just so fascinating.
They really are. And I think they get a bad rap, especially when it comes to, I suppose, like superstition and mythology. I mean, actually, just superstition in general when it comes to animals is really funny. Who decided that black cats were unlucky, for example? It's so sad.
Seriously, I know, and it's the reason why a lot of black cats around Halloween time they go missing, because like people who own them, then they walk around, people like kill them,
Yeah,
and
it's
it's
so
just like,
sad.
why?
Like, in what way is this animal going to harm you just by walking in front of you? Although even superstitions like black cats being unlucky, superstitions change from country to country. Actually, where I originally come from in Britain, black cats, if you see them on your wedding day, are thought to be very, very lucky. So there you go. I mean, it changes from place to place. Although, speaking of superstitions, who in the world decided that a rabbit's foot is lucky?
I don't know. I don't know the origin of that one, but it is so strange. I mean,
It
like, is it?
is.
I wonder if it encouraged people to kill rabbits, or if it's like you take a foot of a rabbit that has already been dead. I don't know. Either way, I'm just like, I don't need it.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, I think it's supposed to be the left foot of a rabbit. Like, oh,
Okay.
one part of this rabbit is lucky. It's not the ears, it's not the front right or the front left or the back right. It's the back left. That's where the stemming of this good luck is going to come from. Like, what?
It's so weird. But I do know that like rabbits are considered lucky in a lot of cultures, but I don't know why. And I think, I mean, if I had a guess, I'm totally pulling this out of my ass, but like rabbits are very what's the word? They produce a lot very quickly.
Very
So it's like
fertile,
yeah, they're
prolific
fertile.
breeders.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
like I think it represents prosperity and like good fortune, something like that.
Yeah. Like maybe fertility, I could see that, but I mean that
Mhm.
in in historically where agricultural farmers, we were hunter gatherers and then we brought in agriculture, and rabbits are one of the biggest destroyers of crops though. So that doesn't really make
Hmm.
any sense. I can see it. I can see the logic behind it, but in actual fact, most people don't want rabbits around because they destroy crops.
Right. Yeah, I don't
Oh
know. I'm
well.
gonna look into this.
Oh well. And like rabbits, black cats, one of my favorites is wolves actually. Wolves have been
Mm,
so demonized in so
I
many
know.
countries, but I don't know, do we have time for one last story?
Yes, 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 yes.
Awesome. Have you ever heard, and this is actually really nice, this is a really nice place to kind of bring everything kind of full circle in a way. So this is a true thing. You can Google it. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Cinderella wolf. Have you ever heard of the Cinderella wolf?
No, what is that?
Okay. This is the reason why one of my favorite numbers in the world is the number 42. Because when they reintroduced wolves to Yellowstone, they reintroduced, I think it was like 31 wolves into Yellowstone. Because for a while there were no wolves in Yellowstone, and they thought, you know what, let's reintroduce them or bring back the natural order of things. So they reintroduced, I think it was 31 wolves into Yellowstone, and they all had a number, so like 1 through 31, I think. And the number 42 was a female, and she became known as the Cinderella wolf because in her pack, she was like one of the lowest ranking wolves. She was like the omega. So at the very top, you've got the alpha male, the alpha female. Then you've got like the beta females. And at the very, very bottom, you have like the omegas. And they are subservient to everyone. They get picked on. If they dare to reproduce, their young are the ones that get picked off because they're not supposed to be reproducing. But the Cinderella wolf, number 42, was so beloved by all the other female wolves in the pack because she was super gentle. But the number 41 was her sister, and her sister was tyrannical. I mean, in the history of wolves, this wolf was super aggressive to the other wolves in her pack. And her mate was, so she was the alpha female, number 41. Her mate was a male called number 21, I believe. Yes, I think it was 21. And so 41, 21, they were the top, and then Cinderella wolf was at the bottom. But number 21, the male, had a bit of a thing for Cinderella wolf, which is unheard of because the alpha male does not want to be mating with the omega female. Like, it's science. You don't want to do that. Like, there's an order in the pack. And Cinderella wolf's sister did not like this and was constantly beating up Cinderella wolf to the point where number 42, the Cinderella wolf, went off and made her own den. But number 21, the male, would come and like sneak on over to come and see her. And they actually mated and they produced pups. Now, this is all well documented. This is not like some fairy tale, despite the name Cinderella. But Cinderella wolf's sister caught wind of this and came to Cinderella wolf's den, which was like a secret den where she was raising her pups, because number 41, who was the alpha female, she was also raising number 21's pups. She had her own litter and didn't want to have other pups competing with hers. So she went to go and try and kill Cinderella wolf's pups. And Cinderella wolf was like, no, I'm sick of all of the beatings that you've given me. And she turned on her sister. And that like never happens in a wolf pack. The omega is normally so like squashed down that they won't dare. Maybe some of the like higher rankings will try and bicker for top position. But Cinderella wolf was such good, like on such good terms with all the other wolves that they all joined in. And they beat back the alpha female who was tyrannical. They were all sick of her. So Cinderella wolf was like, oh, guess I'm the queen now. And she moved her pups in such a power move into the same den that number 41's pups were in. And not only did she raise her own young, but instead of killing her sister's pups, she actually raised them as her own. And Cinderella wolf and so number 42 and number 21 ended up becoming such a bonded pair and such a successful pair that they were the leaders for years of the biggest pack known in the whole world. And it was like such a chill, harmonious pack, with Cinderella wolf at the top with Alpha 21. And then when Cinderella wolf sadly died, I think in 2004, her mate, which was number 21, was observed by park rangers to be howling for her for 2 days straight. Like he was heartbroken. And eventually, I think the pack eventually disbanded because she was kind of the one that was holding them all together. But yeah, that was just one of my favorite stories. It just shows that although wolves are demonized in popular culture and in mythology as well, they're seen as like shapeshifters and tricksters and like demonic. They have such an interesting pack. They have such an interesting dynamic, and it shows that they have a lot of empathy. It shows that they're very intelligent, and I mean, their stories make for even better soap operas than like everyday TV does. So if you get a chance to read about the Cinderella wolf, just Google it. She was really well known. She was a beautiful charcoal colored wolf. And when she died at the age of 8, which is pretty good for a wild wolf, it was noted that unlike any other wolf that had ever been examined in the wild, all of her teeth were in perfect condition. She was such a healthy specimen. She helped to repopulate Yellowstone. She's still got offspring there to this day, and plenty of descendants. So yeah, she's a real success story and really, really interesting, lovely story and a really nice contribution to wolf history.
Wow. That's amazing. That was a roller coaster. I mean, so I assume they called her Cinderella Wolf after all of it happened. They were like, this is literally like a Cinderella story, kind of.
I think so. And it was because of how her sister beat her back. Yeah, she had other sisters as well. Some of her other sisters left the pack because they were like, we're not dealing with number 41 because number 41 is crazy. But Cinderella Wolf, number 42, stuck it out, even though she was getting beat on by her sister all the time, and like wolf beatings are no joke, they can kill each other. But she still had the nerve to go off, create a den, mate with the alpha male. Like, she believed in herself, even though she thought this guy was too good for her. She still mated with the alpha male. They seem to have a truly loving relationship. I mean, I'm kind of anthropomorphizing a little bit here, but they were very, very close for many, many years in ways that other wolf packs have not been observed to be quite as close, especially into rank as well. It's really fascinating. So yeah, that's one of my favorite stories when it comes to true animal stories.
I love that. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna let's see if I can find some books or
Yeah,
documentaries
there was one documentary. I think it's like The Wolves of Yellowstone or something. It's well worth watching. Just try and Google it. I don't think there's much on YouTube about it, but there is certainly a lot of literature about the Cinderella wolf of Yellowstone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that with us.
Thanks, you're so welcome. I'm glad I could just like give you all the heebie-jeebies and then bring it back to a nice loving place.
No, I mean, that's a really nice place to end our chat. Well, thank you again so much for joining me for Ouija Wednesday. For those of you watching, I do this every Wednesday. I have a new guest every week. And Em, if you ever want to come back, you are obviously more than welcome to.
Am I allowed to after talking about pipa toads?
Yes. We'll never speak of pipa toads again.
Okay, that's a deal.
All right. If people want to find you, Em, where can they find you?
So the two most prevalent places would be on YouTube. My channel is Emzotic, which is EMZOTIC, and that's all animals and pet care and creature features where I pick an animal and talk at length about them. And then also on Instagram, which is at Emzoticofficial, which is all one word.
Nice. Well, thank you so much. I learned so much tonight.
Oh, I'm glad, and I hope everybody else enjoyed the show as well. If anybody has any like questions and stuff, they can feel free to shoot them to me, like on Instagram, or you can shoot them to Sapphire and she can ask, and I can always like answer them in like a story or something on Instagram. So yeah,
do that. Awesome. All right. Well, have a good night, everybody, and have a good night, Em. Thank you so much again for joining.
Thank you for having me. Good night, everyone.
Yeah.